Alrighty, welcome to this, an ArseBrothers rantcast, an Arsebros O.G. And just start off with mass technical issues on the fucking mobile, using headphones. I probably sound like I'm in a toilet. I've just been on another podcast with Boston Oval, and they do a Benfica podcast, and they were asking me some pretty heavy-hitting questions over there about the Arsenal, and now I get to come over here and I get to do it with Toby. Tobes, mate, how you feeling, champion? How you feeling, buddy? You okay? Have you given in to despair like so many of our other Arse brothers, or are you like me and you've kind of dug yourself into a hole of sanity?
I'm struggling to have the positive outlook as much as I have been the last few weeks. I honestly don't know. So instead of me making my point now, let's work it out as we go along, and we'll reach some type of catharsis by the end, hopefully.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, it's like, don't get me wrong, this is getting really difficult, ArseBrothers fans. It's getting difficult to keep coming on and keep breaking down games, keep talking about lineups, keep talking about the same players being picked and achieving the same results and the same things. But Toby, one thing I put out into the world, and I put out into our group after the game, was that in this game, statistically, we improved in every single metric from the Tottenham game. As far as how much we conceded was less, the XG of the chances that we conceded was lower. We have more shots on target than any other game in the Premier League so far this year, a higher XG than any other game in the Premier League this year. We saw a better performance from Aubameyang, granted for 15 minutes, than what we have seen this year against Fulham. We defended higher than we did against Tottenham, including our midfield who had a higher starting point. And for me, Toby, I found that, yes, the result didn't come, and we can talk about Granit Xhaka, and we can talk about him being a shit cunt for fucking days, right? But the result didn't come, but I kind of felt like the performance was nowhere near as bad as the result, and that the result kind of compounded exponentially people's way of analysing the performance.
Yeah, look, I think you're probably right. Apart from pretty poor finishing and not taking our opportunities in the first half and early in the second, I certainly can't say I wasn't enjoying the game more. I mean, dare I say it, no one else has said this, but I even thought Xhaka was having an okay game in terms of his passing and distribution.
And not only that, so he wasn't standing as deep; he was standing higher up.
Yeah, but let me finish my point before everyone jumps down my throat, because no one is going to like Xhaka after this point. Like this is full stop. We're not going back from this point. But my point was that the game itself was going fairly well. You've just got players that are so down on confidence, i.e. Lacazette should have scored a couple, certainly should have sent Aubameyang through on goal. You know, we got those players that just don't have the confidence to step up at those moments because they're petrified. They're in this terrible run of form now, so they don't believe in themselves anymore. So up until that fateful moment where, you know, the bloody Titanic ran into the iceberg, that's my analogy for the throat grab. Yeah. We were on for a victory. And, you know, I'm not saying the opposition was great, although they did work hard and rough us up, which is exactly what I said would happen on the Friday Arse show with Scunny Mike. And they roughed us up and they got in our face and we crumbled. And whether we crumbled because the player himself doesn't have the ability to get over himself and makes these mistakes consistently, or the team's in such a bad fucking place that they didn't have the ability to see beyond the frustration, you know. And then we saw that with El Neni as well, and by all accounts he should have gone off. And I also thought Tierney got the shit knocked out of him by Ben Mee or Tarkovsky or someone along the way. So there was definitely a tactic that way. And that's certainly not to excuse any of it. But I think coming back to your point about the metrics, we were doing all right. We were doing a bit better, and we would have won that game.
Yeah, no doubt. Look, that 15 minutes after halftime, I would argue, is the best 15 minutes that football team has put together in the entire season. You know, that group of players, that group of starting players, and you know, we can move on. I think I want to move on to the Granit Xhaka thing a little bit later because I don't want it to be the exclamation point of this chat. You know, because it's the exclamation point of every chat. And anyone who's listened to us for long enough knows our sentiments on Granit Xhaka as a person and as a decision maker, regardless of whether or not in a particular system he's, you know, able to look like he's a reasonable footballer, even taking just the footballing aside and removing that from him. We know what sort of character Granit Xhaka is. We've seen it. He showed it to us. And like, this isn't a great surprise to me. But I have something to say about that later on. But I want to talk about the other things, Toby. I want to talk about the other things in this game that I think were interesting or that I thought were quite heartening to watch. Again, from a defensive perspective, Toby, up against Burnley, it's the first time in a long time that Arsenal has had two big aerial dominant centre-backs who get rid of stuff and who look, I don't know, like they have what it takes to be able to go up against the Burnley. And I mean, if we look at Aubameyang's goal, I'm not going to blame Aubameyang for that. It's very unlucky. He has to contest for the ball. It comes off the back of his head. But other than that, up against the Burnley team who is looking for that opportunity, two of the best players on the pitch for me were Rob Holding and Gabriel, if you remove the fact that they had a couple of poor passes and gave away possession.
Yeah, I think distributionally, you know, particularly Rob Holding is a bit weaker. But in terms of solidarity, what you want is for your central defenders to be able to not get bullied against the strikers. And I think we should remember how many small, slight, 5'10", 5'11" central defenders we've had over the years. I mean, the list goes on, you know, Vermaelen, Koscielny, Mustafi, you know, it's just on and on and on and on, who just didn't have the physical attributes to stand up in the Premiership. And I understand there's a trade-off between distribution, ability on the ball, playing as kind of a midfield and getting the attack going and all of that stuff. But sometimes you want a defender just to be a fucking defender first. So, you know, the ability to do that. And this is the awful thing about our situation, is that we've solved a problem, but it's caused another problem. And now we're worse than what we began with. So it's
really funny you say that, because I wrote down one statement after the game, and I wrote down, "Is the cure worse than the disease?" And that's what I wrote down after the game. And the reason why I wrote that down was because in my mind I was almost like, if playing that static style of football with five at the back, right, was the way forward, and the disease there was the fact that we weren't going to create goals. You know, we weren't going to be exciting enough for Arsenal fans. And the cure to that disease was putting Granit Xhaka back into a two-man midfield and playing four at the back and pushing the wing-backs higher up. Like, I honestly, I think we have been so much worse since making that decision to go to a back four away from a back five. We've been so much worse in most of the other metrics that I almost feel like the biggest downfall of Mikel Arteta, the biggest downfall that we can look at for Mikel Arteta, is that he knew what he had. He had worked out what the best way to play with those particular people was, and that he didn't have the wherewithal and he hasn't had the experience or the balls to say, no, well, fuck you, that's how I'm playing. I don't care if everyone's going to ask me about attacking stats every single press conference, because this is going to get me the most points at the end of the season.
Yeah, look, yes and no. I mean, you could argue about, you know, I mean, I think with the back four, we've literally just finished saying that Gabriel and Rob Holding did a great job there. I think our fullbacks, I mean, probably Hector's struggled defensively, but I think Tierney's been good. You know, and having that extra body in the midfield has been kind of nice at times. There's been times in the Spurs game where we played quite well and looked better, and there were times in this game also. So I'm not really sure, sticking, with the back three, particularly when things are so fluid anyway, whether that is the point. But, I mean, for discussion's sake, yeah, I probably agree with you sticking with the back three, because it doesn't necessarily need to be all about defence. You can have your wing backs tucking in midfield and creating the extra numbers that way, and protecting those shit cunts in our central midfield, which, as we know, is our biggest problem. We've also mismanaged, and we don't want to go too macro because we do this all the time, but we've mismanaged players leaving because their personality didn't fit. We haven't been able to shift out the dross and the overpaid players, which probably affects the team spirit. And then there's been some unlucky stuff. Partey, that's unlucky. We didn't know he was going to get injured because he seemed the Man U game, and he hasn't really played since then. And then who would have known how shit Ceballos would have been this season? To the point.
Ceballos is a really interesting
I was so happy when he came back.
Yeah, a really interesting discussion point, Toby, because at the end of last season, well, funnily enough, in the middle of last season, we did a podcast.
We'd all given up on him. Yeah.
Titled "What is Ceballos?" And Yumi and Manny had this conversation about how the fact he wasn't big enough to sit deep, he wasn't creative enough to go further forward, he probably didn't have the motor to be a number 8, and yet he had all of these attributes. Then we come back post-COVID, and he picks up so many positive 3s and positive 2s that he drives himself into the ArseBrothers end of year second place for Player of the Year.
Yep.
Then when we get him back for another loan, we're all talking, just sign him, just give them the money, just get him in. We can build a midfielder around this guy. Yep. And he's come into the team this year, looked terrible in the system that he played in last year. When he played it, somehow looked amazingly worse. And then when he's played in a 2, one of the amazing things I've found about Ceballos this season is his inability to make passes. His pass accuracy is poor, but also his decision making when he gets into the final third is poor. And Clive from Arsenal Vision, I know he often, every episode, we'll get a yell on here, but I do really fucking like him. I like the way his brain works. He was talking about the fact that all of the guys in front of Ceballos essentially need early ball. They need balls through the line quickly. But he was talking about how Ceballos wants 4 and 5 touches before he releases the ball. So it's like in boxing, Toby, you have feints where you throw out little fake punches to get someone to react. And it's like Ceballos is throwing out feints. Like little touch, he'll look and the defender will go and the attacker will go to make a run. And then he'll do a little drag back behind the foot, little touch, drag back again. And by which stage everyone is standing there like, when are you going to pass the ball? When is the ball coming? And there seems to be I think that's one of the things with Arsenal. There's no cohesion at the moment coming out of those midfield options. But also, I've felt that even when we looked good in this game, and when Aubameyang started to look better, it was because the ball was going pop, pop, pop. Off El Neni, pop into the midfield, through the line for Aubameyang to get onto. And we had first time shots. Lacazette had a first-time shot where the ball had been moved to the byline. Saka had a first-time shot where the ball had flashed across. Aubameyang had a couple of first-time shots. Yep. So I don't understand.
Space and pace, and that's what gives you the ability to pass the ball almost into the net, because you've opened up the space, the power comes easily, you're not making it from a standstill. So, and it was disappointing, the finishes. You had Tierney on his right foot, another player in that position. You had Saka with a strange stab at the ball. Aubameyang just with no confidence. They're Lacazette taking fucking air swings and just, it just honestly. So it's you're right. And coming back from that midfield back to the discussion, if things are happening quicker, and I think we're in such a rut now that, you're not going to bring in a kid or two and then things are going to be immediately less shit. But we saw someone. Now, let me make this point. I think I've worked Arteta out. He prefers discipline over creativity every time. And maybe that's what he liked about himself in a player. It's like, don't let me down. I will pick you, rather than create something from nothing to score a goal, but concede on the break. I won't pick you. Now, the player that I thought has the ability to do that hasn't had a run in this position yet. Once again, the caveat of the Europa League, but the ability to one-touch pass and move straight away. The give and go, run into space, play little triangles, pop, pop, pop would have been AMN. So let's just hope for the Southampton game that Cedric gets the run at right back to replace Hector, and Ainsley gets a run in that middle, and we just want that little bit more chaos. Hopefully the defenders can cover the inevitable errors, but I'm so sick of everything being conservative and safe first when we've got absolutely nothing going forward. And that's why
I think there's two real issues that Arteta is failing to address, and I hope that one of the reasons why he hasn't addressed that issue is because Pepe got injured. Because Pepe got ended. I hope that's the reason why Willian has still been playing there. But, I was watching the game, I was looking at it, and I'm like, I keep having these moments where I for periods of time, think that Willian is playing quite well. And then I look back on it, and I'm like, but if so much ball is going to go through you and you are going to create so little, how can you be playing well?
Exactly.
And so you're not playing well, you're tidy. That's it.
Yeah.
You're not playing well.
The difference is not fucking up as opposed to having the license or the balls to try something in order to get a goal. And that was my biggest issue about the Hector-Willian combination, is that it was so safety first that it was nauseating. Absolutely nauseating. To have that much of the ball.
If you looked at the game, and again, the caveats always exist. It's against Dundalk, right? Caveat mentioned before people start blowing up. But you looked at the way that Maitland-Niles and Emile Smith-Rowe were connecting. And people kept writing in the comments down underneath of that, these guys have played together at youth level. They've clearly got an understanding.
They haven't.
They played all together at youth level. Ainsley's 2 years, nearly 3 years ahead of ESR.
They're just two players that fit.
That both like to play that way, right? Yeah. So Ainsley wants to give it and go, and ESR wants to give it and run. Yeah. Right, so you start to look at it, and you start to not be able to come off the breach with Arteta now, Toby, and that's where I am. Right, like I'm standing on the cliff's edge, staring into a chasm, right, and filled up in that chasm are the selections of Xhaka, the selections of Willian, like the over and over and over and over again selections, and it's at a point where, regardless of how much you like the manager, you want the manager to be successful, you want him to be given the time, you understand that there are so many broken pieces in this machine that I don't think anyone was going to be capable of rebuilding it out of these pieces. We need a new machine. But you cannot keep looking at that and keep looking at the selections and keep looking at the unwillingness, even just to throw one of those guys in there. Do you know what I mean? I said to you weeks ago, Toby, these people putting up teams of like, I want to play Balogun and then ESR in the hole and Nelson on the right, and I want to play Ainsley Maitland-Niles in the midfield.
No, it's dumb. We'd probably get relegated. But I said this the other day. Someone was like, what would happen if you played the Dundalk team in the Premier League? I said, we'd probably get relegated or be very close to it. We'd be in the same position we are now because those guys don't have the requisite ability, and people will argue with me and say, well, you haven't seen it. So how do you know? And I would argue that the coaches coach them week in, week out. And if you listen to Arteta's press conference, when he was asked about them, he said on 3 different occasions, we are picking the team who are giving us the best opportunity to win. Of course.
Right?
Of course. Yep.
And that's because in training, he's looking at the players, he's looking at the skills, he's looking at what they're doing, he's looking at their ability, he's looking at their experience levels. And he's saying, if you just play well or as well as what you can, then I have a better chance of winning than going and playing Reece Nelson there.
Totally.
Who I know is unharmed and appease the fans.
Yep. Now, 2 points on that. Like you say, you introduce 1 or 2 new pieces in that puzzle and you create a spark, other players find form. The other side of things that we need to discuss is if he burns the senior players for good, then he's not going to have them for the rest of the season. And in particular, just before the festive period where we're going to be playing a gazillion games. All right. So I think I think this is his mindset. He's like, even these shit cunts, in terms of the old ones, can beat Burnley, who can't score, who are in the relegation zone and haven't won away from home all year. So he's like, let's grind out one more result out of these guys. It doesn't matter if we don't play well, we're probably going to win. Then on Wednesday, we may have injuries and suspensions. We're going to need to bring in a couple more of the youth players, and then we're going to play again on Sunday. So this game was the one to manage the rest of it, in my opinion.
Toby, is the question, not why did you play such a strong team against Dundalk in a dead rubber and play them all for 90? Like
it was the reserve team against Dundalk.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying is he almost couldn't then select those players with so many games in front of us and say, okay, well, Ainsley, I'm going to do another start. Or ESR. And I love people like, why didn't he play ESR? Why didn't he bring him on? And it's like, ESR has had countless shoulder, hip, hamstring, calf issues and is being heavily managed by the club at the moment in the output of what he's playing. So, like, I just urge Arsenal fans, Toby, and I urge the guys who are in the chat, and actually most of the guys who are in the ArseBros chat, I find are actually, of all of the chats I sit in, I love the guys who are in our chat. They seem to have their heads screwed on and actually like football and understand it. But, you know, I guess that
I was going to say, did you get my point that even the old shit cunts, he was just trying to get one last rise out of them, and he thought he could do it against Burnley, and we probably should have.
Yeah. And he very nearly did. I almost feel like that 15 minutes after half time, I almost felt like, and I will tell you this, Toby, I fell asleep twice in the first half, and I watched the game in the middle of the day. I had to go back and rewatch the first half twice because I actually fell asleep because it was so predictable. But the funny thing is, coming up against Burnley sitting deep, like it probably would have happened even if we were in great form. And it's all about staying in the game and then them getting tired, and they can't do that for an entire game. And then eventually the space will open up, and then you pull them apart and score a couple of goals quickly. They've got to come out. The game opens up. Bada bing, bada boom. You know, if Lacazette doesn't air swing that header back from Willian and that flies in, the game's completely different. Arsenal are riding high. You know, Burnley have to come out. That exchange where Lacazette punts it straight at the keeper where it comes back to him. I think that was first half as well. You know, if that goes in, you know, we're all like, oh, top of the world. You know, hasn't this worked? And Arsenal fans everywhere are chewing their words a little bit. You even said that something similar to me where I was like, up until Xhaka's red card, I was like, probably one of his better performances in quite a while for Arsenal. He actually went and engaged with people. He was spreading the ball quite quickly to the wings. He wasn't taking 4 and 5. And
his combination with Tierney, I was enjoying, you know, because
Xhaka was actually working okay, and Mikel had tweaked it a little bit again, where he had gone back to a bit more of an old system. Where when Tierney was bombing forward, Xhaka was pulling into left back rather than Xhaka pulling back between centre backs and making the three where he's fucking. So I saw
I was going to say, which is what he used to do for Emery, which worked quite well. And I think his only way of playing these days is to cover the space when your wingbacks push forward. But can I say, because I've always been very level-headed with Xhaka and refused to jump on the hate train because I don't see the point in it week after week after week, hating on players and never budging from it. But that's a full stop now. He's got to be done because, you know, if Arteta's going to talk about non-negotiables in terms of player conduct, then what Xhaka has done is all of the goodwill that he created after the Crystal Palace thing and getting back in Arteta's favour and all of that stuff, he's effectively
everyone saying at the team, so being supported by the manager with selection as well.
Yeah. So the full stop has come from the one time when we were getting back on top, a brain fart from someone who should know better has literally cost us the game. So, you know, there can't be a return. That's what I'm saying. There can't be a return this time.
While you're on those points, so all those motherfuckers out there on Twitter who, when Tierney went up and tried to fucking do that guy and Xhaka pushed him away and they were like, oh, how mature is Xhaka? That's why Xhaka's a captain and Tierney's not a captain. Fuck you. Had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. He's gone and done something that's way worse than that in a time when the club needed him so desperately, in a time when the club was back on top. And like I said, in the 15 minutes when the football was the best that the football had been, and we looked like Burnley were on breaking point, you know, absolutely about to break. And what that must do to a club, what that must do to a dressing room, and then to walk off, kick a chair, like, oh, I'm so angry. And you know what, Toby? I could give Xhaka a break if that had been a reaction to someone, say, coming in and double footing him. You know, something like that. Something that was like a brain snap because he was in danger or something like that. But it was a terrible challenge that he put in on the guy prior.
No, I love his challenge. It's exactly what we need to do more of. His challenge. It's his reaction after the challenge. Because the tactical fouling is something that we have envied forever with your Cities and your Chelseas and all that stuff. We were on top. They were making a break. He just chopped him down. And I actually loved the little bit of aggression because you know me, I'm a sucker for that stuff. So I loved it. But the reaction was dumb. He was baited. Our team was baited the whole day. It was typical fucking Sean fucking Dyche. All of that stuff. Say, these guys are pussies. They don't like the niggle. You'll get under their skin and it will happen. And that's exactly what happened, and that was the turning point. I do not mind the tactical fouling. I do not mind getting up and getting in people's face. But that little bit where it went over, that's the brain fart. And what we're talking...
Lacazette literally throw Xhaka away as soon as he threw that hand up. Lacazette literally like smashed him away and had a look on his face like, fuck.
Yeah, well, I think
all that work, we're so fucked.
Yeah. So that's my point. Maybe we don't need to talk about that anymore, but for me, that has to be a full stop. What it does for us now, though, is it loses his value again. And this is the thing Arsenal have a special talent at, is actually devaluing players more than they were even devalued before that they originally devalued. Like, we couldn't be better at fucking ourselves in the arse more than we do on a yearly basis. We are the worst business club, the way we manage our contracts and the way we get bent over. So he's worthless, but I think any option now to move, and for his sake and for our sake, is to say, look, new challenge, new start. It hasn't worked out. You know, this is an end point. Let's start moving in another direction.
So basically, that's a brain snap from someone who is not bought in, who is not emotionally connected to the plight of the team, or is not emotionally connected to the manager.
I disagree.
Well, you can disagree all you want, but I'm telling you that senior players and leaders in football teams and people who have worn the captain's armband and people who get given the captain's armband now as soon as Aubameyang go off the pitch have a better understanding, a better emotional intelligence, a better game awareness and season awareness than to do something like that. And
we love players like Roy Keane and Patrick Vieira. So no, I don't agree with
they still had more emotional awareness than that, Toby. To not do it in that moment. Can you ever see Patrick Vieira in a moment when Arsenal were on their bottom edge, long edge, going?
Okay, well, we weren't. But
I'm talking about the situation. You're talking about the incident I'm talking about the timing of the incident in the scheme of what's happening.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't have, Yep.
That's why I'm saying that you've got a guy who's not. You've got players there and senior players there who clearly aren't emotionally invested in the manager, aren't emotionally invested in the outcomes that the manager needs to see happen, and therefore aren't emotionally invested in the club. Don't understand that the position that the club is in and what they're doing requires certain actions to be taken. And someone put up, when Gendouzi strangles that guy, and everyone said, "Oh, that was the end of it for Gendouzi when he fucking choked."
Everyone said it was good. Everyone we know said it was great that he went and choked that motherfucker. So I think we change with the wind. All right.
No.
What if
where you got it wrong, Toby? Where you got it wrong is Gendouzi is a fucking kid showing fight, and Granit Xhaka is a senior player in the team, a captain. They're not the fucking same. You're not talking about a 19-year-old kid being like, "Fuck you, I'll show you." So you can try and play whatever side devil's advocate stuff you want today. I think it's pretty clear to everyone.
I've just said full stop. I just think it's situational, and I think as fans we change.
The fact that I felt that there was, whether it was intentional maliciousness or an intentional sign of dissent, or whether it was just dissent that came out through the actions of the game.
It's emotion. It's just emotion. And the thing is, this is where the wrong people are at the club, because there's the people that can't deal with that emotion. Anyway, what if El Nene got sent off, which he should have?
El Nene was completely fucking different. Everyone's trying to draw parallels, right? Okay. He's fronting up against someone. He's trying to push him off into the chest, and he gets it wrong and pushes the guy into the face. It never would have been a red card. It never should have been a fucking red card. A yellow was completely sufficient. No issue with it.
I'll have to look at it again, because other things that I've heard.
People are fucked, Toby. Like, look at it with your eyes instead of looking at it with your opinion. This is the problem with Arsenal fans. Frying pans. Arsenal. I'd get some merch. Arsenal fans. This is the problem with Arsenal fans. Arsenal fans apply their agenda and their bias to every single fucking thing that happens on a pitch. Everything.
I agree. I'm not going to argue with that.
Looking at the fucking incident and staring at it and being like, I have played football. I have played centre-back. And it is very common that when you have someone in front of you, that you are pushing off them in the chest. And you even see on Lenny afterwards, he's saying to him, he's like, I just pushed you. And the guy's like, you pushed me in the face.
Fine. Okay, no. Fair enough. Okay. And I will freely admit that I was fast forwarding through that point and I actually hadn't seen it, but I would heard that it was bad. So Max Toby Gendouzi at least didn't get sent off during the game. Yeah, fair play. He had the sense to do it after the game. Yeah, okay. Yep.
Casey wants to fucking smash the cunt afterwards. So thank you. Buying into
Yep.
Anyway, moving on.
Yep.
Just quickly, I wanted to have a chat about Aubameyang's performance. So in my opinion, I actually gave him positive points in this game. I was the only guy who gave him positive points in this game. Granted, to me, it was very hard to find positive points for anyone. But Toby, I gave him positive points on the preface that we have destroyed Aubameyang on here frequently for a lack of effort, for a lack of desire, and a lack of trying to grab the team up by its bootstraps, put the team on his own back, and go and get the goal. There was 15 minutes in this game where I saw the old Aubameyang, and I saw him decide, fuck it, he was going to win. And yes, he doesn't have his shooting boots. Yes, it didn't come off for him, and he cracked a couple straight at the keeper. But for me, I found that to be at least something I could take out of the game, and I could feel like, okay, he's still got it, right? He hasn't lost it completely, as in lost faith in the manager, lost faith in the dressing room. He still looked at that game situation, was like, fuck, we need something. Got on the ball, started to buzz around, started to move. Thoughts?
Yeah. Look, I was the same. I gave him positive points, and then I deleted them because I thought, just on effort and for a 90-minute performance, there were other players that deserved it more. But yeah, I agree with you. For the 10, 15 minutes, and just quickly, that's why the Xhaka thing pissed me off so much, because that was at that point where we were having shots on goals and things were happening. So yeah, I thought it was better. There was a bit more space. He started to buzz around a bit more, even drop a bit deeper. He's not as bad as people think, but he needs to lay it off quickly, and you need to have midfielders to riff off. So if anything is sped up, it's fine. If you're receiving it stagnant with your back to goal, he's going to get the shit beaten out of him. So he does need that. So yeah, it was good. It was good, but it was very short.
Yeah, he's a lot skinnier than you think he is as well, Aubameyang. I'd be interested to know how much he's
guy.
He's not a big guy, not a robust guy. He's not going to ride challenges and back in. And
he's a gazelle, not a rhino.
Yeah, even when you're looking at a heading ability, Toby, you know, when you're going up to contest a header, to contest a 50-50 header, a lot of the time that's body weight. Yeah, that's body weight based. You know,
unless you're Peter Crouch.
Well, yeah. Well, even for me playing centre back at school, because I was quite tall, you know, and a good header of the ball. Even for me in those 50-50s, I would often end up on my arse, you know, backwards, because if someone who is 15 kilos heavier than me and I go shoulder to shoulder to him off the air with force, off the ground with force, I'm going to bounce back. Look, Toby, we've got to start going through it now. We have to start talking about it. This is the conversation piece that is going to dictate after every single game, after every single loss. And, you know, as much as we'd like to do on the podcast and we'd like to say, you know, let's not talk about it moving on, it's something that we do have to talk about. And that is the nature of what is going to happen with Mikel over the coming days. No doubt Toby's Burnley game had a big red circle around it, probably about 14 times on Mikel's board for this coming month. Knowing that we have to go to an informed Southampton, we've got Chelsea in the cup, we've got City in the cup, and we've got Everton coming up. Toby, the likelihood, and I'll talk about the other part of it, which is the forced changes. We'll talk about that at the end and what we expect to see from those forced changes in the squad. But Toby, based on current form, I think
I'm still here, by the way. Keep going.
Okay. Based on current form, Toby, you know, if we were to play again tomorrow, I think we are playing quite soon anyway. I don't think there would be a lot of people who, based on any metrics or any statistics or any current form, could say I'm confident of 3 points against Southampton. I'm confident of that. I don't think that anyone can look at those Chelsea and those City games, you know, both in cups, and say, I think we're going to be in those cups. For me, I actually think it could be a good thing that we get bailed out of those cups early, because really the only two things that matter are Europa and getting us high up in the Premiership.
Yeah, see, I don't know in that because our kids need game time.
I know, but you know what, Toby? I'm talking about the immediacy, I guess, not the long term, but I'm talking about the immediacy. Toby, currently Arsenal is sitting in 15th. By the end of this game, I think we could sit as low as 17th. I cannot fathom, I cannot envisage a world in which the club does not take action by the end of this five game stretch. That's not me saying that I believe that they, that's not even me applying an opinion to it, that I believe they should, or that I believe someone is going to come in and do something immaculate better with this group. But I'm just saying I can't envisage a world where they would be able to continue to support Arteta regardless of their appetite to support him until the end of the year.
No, because he could have actually ended up losing the dressing room. So for the first time, so I was listening to, I don't know, BBC 5 Live or something, and for the first time officially from pundits and ex-players and stuff, I heard about the cancers in the dressing room. So I hadn't heard that before. You'd mentioned it previously, and I was like, hearsay and conjecture. You can't know this. But when that starts entering, I don't want to say the mainstream, because the mainstream doesn't necessarily mean good, but when ex-players start talking about that inner sanctum code type of stuff, and they say, you can't have those big personalities on the big contracts who are still mates with big players in the dressing room, still at the club because we haven't been able to get rid of them? Is there some real factionalization going on within that space? Now, Arteta's tried to make some big plays, and that can be complemented. And I think it was particularly at the start. But he's in this situation now where the squad is worse than it was previously. You've got rifts within the team. The confidence is done. And all of the good things that he did previously are now at the point where, regardless of whether we want him to be the future, and I think the board still want him to be the future, there will come a point where it has become untenable because the club simply can't take that risk anymore. You know, whether we like it or not, we still got these players.
The ship will be sailing close to the relegation shore by that stage.
And we have to say, regardless of whether all of the things that we think the reason that he's made it, he has stuck by players that have not been performing. So, and that's the one thing that we can't say, that we can't turn back on him. And we've discussed ad nauseum that the kids probably aren't ready yet. The older players at any time can click and actually find some form, but there's no denying that players steadfastly stuck with, such as Willian, you know, and potentially others as well, have not drawn a big red cross on his back. And that's going to play out in the next 4 or 5 games.
Can I just sort of take everyone's minds back to the Freddie Ljungberg experiment and what everyone wanted after Embry? And everyone wanted Embry to get these guys out and play all the kids. And we all thought there was going to be this mass turnaround, and it didn't work for Freddie. You know, I really do think that there is some that there is a lack of looking back through history, like even recent history throughout our fan base, who just seem to think that the answer is, you know, to play Balogun and to play Nelson and to play ESR and to play all these guys. And I honestly, I don't believe that, like I said to you at the start of the show, I don't believe that that is the option.
But I like the Freddie approach. I really did. I really did. I could have got behind it. But anyway.
Toby, you and everyone else. But it didn't see the results, Toby. Freddie didn't end up securing that job. We didn't end up saying, oh, well, we'll give it to Freddie until the end of the season.
No, I remember.
So you can apply your emotion, and you can apply, I guess, like our biases towards young kids, towards homegrown talent, towards the guys who we run out against Dundalk and Rapid Vienna and guys like that. You know, and put all the caveats in place that say, well, you know, it's against this opposition, it's against that opposition. But really, of all of those players on the bench that people are calling for, only one of them has any tangible Premier League experience and has a history of being effective, and that's Ainsley Maitland-Niles. None of the others have enough game time. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about Chelsea and their loaning system. And they're like, people thought last year that Tammy Abraham was the same as playing someone like a Balogun or playing like an Eddie. By the time Tammy Abraham had come back into the Chelsea system, he played 120
games. Yeah, I listened to the same thing. Yeah,
against the Dogs. You know,
he's a big unit too. Yeah.
So this idea that you can go and throw Balogun in there, or you can go and throw any of these guys in there, and they're going to be the answer. Now, am I saying that if you throw Balogun on, if you put him on the bench and you throw Balogun on for 15 minutes at the end of the game when we're getting done, do I think he could do something? Yes, I do. Yeah. Right? And if he's hot and he's ready to go, the same way when we threw Eddie on that first time against Norwich, Toby, and he scored 2 headers in 10 minutes, or like 2 goals in the box.
Do you remember the Italian kid for Man U in the Fergie days? 18 years old, came on, first touch scored.
Federico Manchado.
I can't remember his name. If anyone's watching,
it was Federico Manchego or something. Yeah, I'm telling you.
That's a fucking Spanish cheese, Manchego. Yes. Anyway.
Someone in the comments, Google this chat.
If anyone remembers, yeah. But I mean, that's right. So you can have a spin and turn and the technique to make something happen in that moment, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a long-lasting premiership career. And that was my point with making that example of whoever the fuck I'm talking about.
But look, Toby, basically, I think that there's an element that the fans aren't looking at when they're looking at him consistently picking the same players. I agree with the fans. I empathise with the fans. I'm sick of seeing the same names on the team sheet. And I guess this brings us into our next part of our conversation anyway, to finish up the conversation, Toby. Yep. All season, people wanted to see Pepe starting instead of Willian, with Aubameyang through the middle and Saka on the left.
Yep.
We're going to get that in the next game. All season, people have asked asking for Bellerin to come out of the team. We're going to get that. Yep. All season, people are calling for Xhaka to come out of the team. We're going to get that. Is the grass going to be greener against Southampton, Toby, or are we going to be shown the reason why some of these guys haven't been getting to this position?
Well, I mean, sometimes be careful.
I told you, I got the name right, Toby.
Makeda, not fucking Manchego. Thank you, Stan the Man.
I was fucking close.
Yeah.
Grass is greener, Toby.
I think a lot of us have to be careful what we wish for. So, but in saying that, I'm very happy that those players that have frustrated the hell out of us all season will be pulled out and we get to see something different. Because if the Burnley game was make or break before Xhaka's brain fart, this Southampton game at home before we go and play 2 very hard games away is fucking make or break. Now it's proper make or break. And Southampton's in 4th or wherever they are. So, I would like to see the logical thing to do was just plonk Maitland-Niles out on the right to replace Hector. But what I would like to see is something completely different. And we're pretty threadbare with that midfield now. Would be Cedric on the right because he's done an okay job. I think he'll provide less going forward, but he'll be a little bit more solid defensively. And I want to see AMN in central midfield. But whether that happens or not, I don't know. And am I just projecting?
Look, if I'm looking at it logically, who's played more game time at right back this year in all competitions? Cedric has played more game time. So I would be thinking that Cedric would be the next one to come in. You've also got Cedric coming up against Southampton, coming up against his old club. Don't know if that stands for much. You would be thinking that... I thought when Mainsley came on against Burnley, I thought that he looked... I've picked up something with the people have been calling him, and I like it, so I've started using it.
I don't mind that. I might adopt it, Mainsley.
So Mainsley came on at right back against Burnley, and I thought looked very, very assured and very calm on the ball and passed the ball forward really well. Also just went shoulder to shoulder and was a bit bigger and was a bit more athletic. So that part of me is not fearful because I want Ainsley to play regardless of position, but is fearful that that's more likely the case. And if we're looking at what historically Arteta has done, is it more likely that Arteta will play El Neni and Ceballos in midfield and push Ainsley to the right? Or is it more likely that he's going to come out and play Ainsley and El Neni in the midfield and play Cedric on the right?
We know what
that he is boring first or structure first rather than
that's the thing. I want to see AMN in there. He might not even get off the bench. We know, knowing Arteta, and how every time we want to see something, we don't get it. It's like he's tickling our balls and giving us no love. You know, we get nothing and he leads us on and leads us on and leads us on. We know what we're going to get, aren't we? Boring as fuck, El Nene and Ceballos in the middle. We'd fucking Lacazette as a number 10. That's what we're going to get, isn't it, mate?
Yeah. Toby, that's what I think we'll get.
Yeah.
That's what I think we'll get.
And I will be sad.
And I would think that it would be much more likely that these dice rolls that we're talking about will be played out against Chelsea. and that's where you might see, him pick one of those. He might prioritise the FA Cup and deprioritise. But is one FA Cup and one League Cup? I can't remember.
Huh? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. There'll be a break from Europa now, and it'll be the. But
Europa's not until February.
No, that's what I mean. There'll be the domestic cups, yeah. And don't forget.
So anyway, is it more likely or less likely, based on what we know about better, that he's probably going to play around with the squads in the cups and be willing to lose the cups and continue with his mantra at the moment of look, do I think Willian will play? No, I think Willian will get some time on the bench. A lot of people have been saying, why not play Willian at 10? Everyone wants to see Willian at 10. But you know how many games Willian has played at 10 in his career? It's like less than 30 in his 300 and something game career, 400 and something game career.
Yeah.
So I thought the balance that is at 10, I think he's been used at 10 a little bit at international level, and we all know that international football is different, and you can get away with playing people out of position a lot more. So I can't see Willian having the physicality or the running power to get up and down like what we want out of a 10.
Yeah.
I think Pepe will come back into the team. I think Pepe has probably earned his way back into the team and clearly pried him getting sent off for that headbutt. I think it was apparent that Arteta had seen that team playing in the structured way that he needed someone who was going to come in and paint in bright colours. And that's essentially what Pepe provides you. So I think that's definitely going to happen. Toby, I guarantee you it'll be El Neni and Ceballos. I bet you a 6-pack of beer. It'll be El Neni and Ceballos.
Yeah.
And I reckon Ainsley Maitland-Niles will play ahead of Cedric, because that makes no sense either, when Cedric has been being selected at right back in the Europa games.
The only thing that you and I have both spoken about is that Pepe's had his best performances with Mainsley behind him. So that's one thing that I wouldn't mind seeing him. I've just got the horn to see him in midfield, because I'm so fucking bored with our midfield options that
he had in.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. He could have had 2 goals and 3 assists in that game.
Literally everything that everyone has been asking for. They've been asking for someone to take the ball with an open body on the first touch and release it on the second touch. And that's what he did in that game.
You might not have heard this, but I drew the comparison. It only flicked into my brain the other day, but I actually think Mainsley has a lot of Diaby in him in terms of the comparison, like the stride, the cockiness, to be that sort of silkiness that you don't always get with players, where it almost makes them look a bit arrogant, the way they pull things off, the long stride and the power running. So, I'd like to see it, but you're right, mate. Nothing makes sense, and anything that we logically discuss doesn't happen, and we get the same Muppet every week.
I almost know as well, Toby, that if Arteta does the opposite and loses, he's completely fucked. Like if he's hanging on to that dressing room by a thread, and he goes and dumps these guys out and brings the kids in, and they go get done by Southampton because their kids coming up with a Premier League team who's in the top, who's currently sitting in the Europa spot, he gets done. I kind of feel with Arteta that he's been. I said this on the Benfica podcast I was on earlier on. I was like, it was a poison chalice when he came in. I think it was going to be a poison chalice for anyone, because you're asking someone to rebuild a machine from broken parts, and broken parts across everywhere. And not even just broken
and
parts.
Broken old parts. It's like you're trying to build it's like different
machines.
No, totally. I was going to say, you're trying to build a supercar out of like old Morris Minor parts. Components in there that will fail, no matter how much you have other components that are like modern and technologically advanced. You've still got elements in it that will let you down, or components that will let you down.
And not only that, people talk about this team being built of 3 managers worth of players. I actually think it's much more exponentially compounded than that, because it's not just three managers players. You've also got 3 executive teams concepts of how to do business and what the way forward is for the club.
Yep.
I mean, if you add the fact that Wenger was essentially in control for a large period of time, then you've got the direction that Gazidis wanted to put the team into. Then you've got the direction that Raul wanted to put the team into. Then you've got
Raul.
Then you've got all these, and no one, you've got Mislin Taps coming in and out of that. You've got Edu's coming in and out of that. You've got all of these elements coming in and out of that. And somehow Arteta was meant to pick up all of those broken pieces of structure and somehow mold them into something that people were going to be comfortable with, or that people were going to say, this looks like a finished product. Why does anyone think it would ever look like a finished product when there's been no consistency? And it brings me to a roundabout point that if we can get through without sacking this guy, even if it's just until the end of the season, even if it's just until 3 months into next year after the clear out, that will be beneficial for us. Even if we finish 15th. You know, I was going to finish with this question, Toby.
I agree. I'm 100% in.
Let me ask you this question, Toby.
Yeah.
Many, many years ago, you and I, before we were podcasting, when we were just lowly fans talking to each other, used to speak about the fact that we thought that the best thing that could possibly happen to Arsenal during a period of time was for us to start missing out on Champions League football. Because we thought that would be the kick up the arse that the club needed to realise they couldn't just coast. They couldn't just bring kids through, grab people out of the French league and still think they were always going to be a top 4 club. Toby, we've been proved that last year had very little effect on the club making better decisions for the club, better decisions for the football, better decisions for the coaches, managers and the players.
I'd say it made us even more short term, to be honest.
Toby, does us finishing 15th make massive changes to Arsenal in the future? Does it mean that the Cronkies will either sell? Do you think that it will force them into selling? Do you think it will force them into investing $500 million? Or do you think that none of this is good and there's no silver lining and there's no change on the horizon?
Well, who knows? There's a couple of things that may happen. You've looked at Chelsea traditionally having one of their basket case seasons and winning the Premiership the year after. So that can happen. With the Cronkies, though, we don't have that type of investment. So does another Ogliarch, another bloody nation state, which I don't want anyway, because, you know, to me, that's not winning in the proper way. But, you know, other people may beg to differ. Would they come in, an aggressive owner with real aspirations for success, pick up a club, maybe a little bit on the cheap with a really good youth system, and then just throw a butt ton of money at it? That could happen. I honestly don't know. The thing I'm 100% into, though, is that there is no point, if we can avoid it, getting rid of the manager now when he's eaten the shit with this horrible squad and unable to put in a vision. Because there's been some great signings, you know, Gabriel, Tierney, the uncovering of Saka. You know, there's been, you know, Partey potentially. There's been some really good pieces added to this, but there's a whole bunch of dross. And if we're going to flip-flop between managers, but you haven't even been able to clear out the ones that the last 3 managers haven't been able to work with, then what's the point? What's the point? You know, maybe, you know, you'll bring in Big Sam, you know, to get us out of the relegation battle.
Stop fucking talking about Big Sam. Stop talking about All right, Toby, interesting conversation today. Thanks for coming in and chatting. We really are trying hard at the moment to, I don't know, have slightly more intelligent, less tribal, less moany conversations. And guys, we're trying to bring you content, you know, that is more than just everything is shit, we're shit, the manager is shit, the players are shit, the executive team was shit, the end of Wenger was shit, moving from Highbury was shit. You know, like this is the stuff that we're tuning into every week on podcasts. And Toby, I'm not going to lie, I'm never listening to less content at the moment than what I've listened to in the last couple of weeks. I'm struggling to get through other people's content as well because, you know, it's so fucking moany and it's so fucking painful. And what I hope that we've sort of done today, Toby, is we've looked a little bit wider. We've looked at the business within the business. You know, we've looked at the possible outcomes and what could happen. And I think in a way, Toby, what it comes down to is this situation for me is going to be, by hook or by crook, it's going to be sorted out by January, by the end of this December period. If we go and lose all 5 of these games, I'm telling you, Arteta won't be there. I don't know who will be there. I don't know who the guy who would come in would be. You would be thinking that the only way you could get rid of Arteta in that case if you had someone like a Rafa Benitez who wanted to come back from China.
Well, it ain't going to be Gerard. It ain't going to be Gerard Houllier, is it?
That's a bit crass, champion. But we'll just move past your crassness. But you have to admit, Toby, you know, it would require someone like that. It would require someone like, you know, and I didn't want this guy when he was available, but someone like an Ancelotti, someone like a Rafa Benitez, I
would have been happy with either of those.
No, I'm not. Toby, I would have been fine with both of them. Especially Rafa Benitez was the one who I actually wanted at the time.
Me too. 100%.
But I'm just saying, Toby, if they are not available, there is no point sacking Arteta and putting his assistant in charge. There's no point. Someone the other day was saying sack Arteta and bring in Vieira, and I was like,
hasn't Vieira just been sacked? Yeah.
But I can see why someone would say that, and I'll tell you what that would do for Vieira. I'll tell you just quickly before we go. I'll tell you what that would do for Vieira. What that would do right now. Vieira would come into that team, probably get 5 or 6 wins on the bounce because he's Patrick Vieira. He's Patrick Vieira.
Just like Arteta did.
Right? And then probably running into next season, maybe, just maybe, there's enough backing and enough of the drops coming out that Vieira has an opportunity to do quite well.
And then we're in the same spot.
What I would question is, Toby, if we're able to hold on to Arteta, let Arteta clear out these clicks, this drop, your Ozils, your Kolasinacs, your Socrateses, your Louises, your Xhakas, all of these guys who are power brokers within the dressing room, and we've been talking about it for weeks, talking about the clicks, you know, but all of the ability to do that, I would still just argue that Mikel Arteta would have the same opportunity for success as a Patrick Vieira would, given the opportunity to clear those people out next season. Exactly. But so I'll put my hands up and I'll say if we are fucking fucked by January, he will have to go just so that someone else can come in and give us the opportunity.
I agree. Yep. It's in the balance. It's in the balance, you know. And what I was going to say before is that I wouldn't have wanted one of the big time older managers to come in, because really all of them have hauled themselves around all those clubs now. Like all of them have done multiple, you know, your Inters, your Reals, your Liverpools, your Juves, your various other ones, even your Bayern Munich's, but between the two that we discussed. So for us and longevity and finding something really future based, with a new school way of thinking, you know, we've probably got the best guy in the job at the moment, but it all hinges, Tony Pulis, it all hinges on the next 5 games. We are really in the balance now.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening. Thanks to the guys in the chat. Why not .sentiment SC? I can never say your fucking handle, but you're always in, so thanks for coming in. Don't waste the tweet, mate. Thanks for coming in. Ruthless Gooner TV, thank you for being with us. Stan the Man, thank you for being with us. I think that's everyone that we had today, Toby. We're going to be back after the Southampton game, which I think is tomorrow. I've got a pretty fucking hectic week coming up, being in December and owning a bar, so I don't know if I'm going to knock out an Arsebros O.G, but Toby, I thought it might be cool. I might ask Darren if he wants to do it and get you to do one with Dazza.
Yeah, cool. Yep. That would be good. My podcasting man crush.
There you go. Gotta love a bit of Darren. Gotta love him. Fucking old cunt. All right, Darren. Fucking Darren. I've fucked everything up now. All right, cunts. We'll fucking catch you later on the next Arsebros O.G. Peace.
Peace.